candlelight, still burning bright.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Edge Radio broadcast. I'm your host, Daniel Lott. Is there a lady who shines white light and wants to show you something other than the truth? You stay tuned. You just tapped into the hottest radio station in the nighttime world. This is the Edge Radio broadcast.
Buying a stairway to heaven.
And we're going to find out if indeed she is buying a stairway to heaven. My friends, by the time you get done with this show, you're going to find out there's a lady who is buying you or may have bought in you a stairway to the depths of hell. For this evening, tonight's special guest we're going to be bringing online here shortly, Stephen Schroeder. And Stephen Schroeder has collected extensive evidence that Washington, D.C. and Indianapolis are cities built for pagan worship, and he's got the evidence to back it up. So don't you tune off thinking about that's an outrageous claim, because we're going to present so much evidence your brain will explode if you try to go to your usual place of denial. But of course, first you're going to be upset.
They don't want to take it to court. Like I've said, I've lost my freedom before. I've made my stand before. They're not going to desecrate the cross and Ten Commandments. And like I told them, you remove the cross and the Ten Commandments off of the obelisk, we'll leave Pan alone. And until then, the Protestants are not going to roll over.
Well, Stephen Schroeder, that's phenomenal, because you have gone well beyond the realm of what most Christians would do. Most of them would do exactly like you said earlier, write a letter to the editor. They would go to their church and pray. They would have a bean supper to raise some money, maybe for some flyers. I mean, that's about it when it comes to Christianity striking against the heart of the beast. Is it because they really don't believe the gospel, where it says that the disciples went out, and as they were being thrown in jail and as they were being stoned, that they were followed by signs and wonders? And today's church, as far as I can tell, the only signs and wonders they've got is the wonders made up by Benny Hinn and his ilk. And so isn't that really what the case is? They really don't believe what they're reading when it says that signs and wonders will follow them when they stand up for the truth?
Well, they're in their comfort zone, and they like being there. And the bottom line is, faith without works is dead. When God told Gideon to go out and topple the idols and the altars of Baal, he didn't tell Gideon, why don't you pray about it, why don't you get people together and let's talk about it, whatnot. He told him to go out at nighttime and to destroy these altars. Okay, it's one of those things. Faith without works is dead. If something is wrong, if something is in defiance to God, if something is standing up and desecrating what's yours, if people don't stand up and do something about it, it's faith without works. They can pray till they're blue in the face. Right now, God's not even hearing the prayers, obviously, and the church is a prime example of that.
Well, give me an example. Did Jesus ever strike back against the paganism in the church?
Well, everybody was saying, Christ was a pacifist and this, that, and the other. But from what I read, when they desecrated the house and made it a house of the money changers, he fashioned a whip. In other words, he took his hands and made a weapon and went in there and drove them out. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with chastisement, especially when you're talking about those who would seek to destroy. It's a matter of self-defense.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you've given a number of examples, and I know that what the history is that Paul was let down in a basket of the city. John the Baptist exposed the sins of whoever was cheating on his brother's wife or whatever. But today's Christians, they're not really they're really not together. If they're not fighting each other, they're fighting to find out what color carpet they want in the church, and then there's a church split, as holy as that is and as spiritual as they get anymore. Let me ask you something. When you talk about desecrating the pan god, how is that done? Does that make the devil mad when you do that?
I'm sure it doesn't make him too awful happy. It's one of those things that if the state will tolerate the pagans from desecrating and profaning that which is sacred to us, they must sit on their hands and allow us to do the same thing. And it's just a matter of letting them know what it feels like. Unless they can, do the right thing. It's amazing. It's like national news. If you splash water on a Quran, that's desecration. But you can display a cross or crucifix in a jar of urine, and that's art. And you can have a painting of Mary sprayed with elephant dung, and that's art. But if you splash a little water on a Quran, that's desecration. That's national news. We've got a cross and commandments that are desecrated with the images of pagan gods, and nobody's doing anything about it. Well, number one, because nobody's making an issue of it. The Star won't report on it because, well, they're accomplices to it. And so there is no other choice. It's just like the Ten Commandments. I exhausted every legal means there was to get the state to comply with its own constitutional laws, state and federal constitutional laws, and they refused to do it. Civil disobedience is a right, and it's not only a right, it's a duty.
Yeah. Well, I think I asked at least a couple guests before talking about when Thomas Jefferson said when such government becomes overbearing, it is the right of the people to throw off such government. But let's get back to this, because this has to do with really Christians doing anything about something. They usually do nothing about everything. Wait a minute. Hey, that was good. I got to rewind that. Hang on, everybody. Let me my program better. I got to remember that in the morning. How do you said that the state had intentionally desecrated the Ten Commandments, and the Christians in the community on their way to their Sunday social didn't care, didn't know. How is it they desecrated those commandments?
Well, number one, to modify the commandments, they removed the second commandment, forbidden graven images. It's interesting. The second commandment is the only commandment that has a warning that the churches get money, so naturally the churches aren't going to be speaking out. Mm-hmm. But the faith-based initiatives, and it's amazing that churches are, well, it's not amazing that churches are all for it because, of course, they're getting paid. But it's just amazing that Christian people have no problem with a government that's officially declaring through the faith-based initiatives that all religions are equal, all gods and goddesses are created equal, and that citizens will pay and support and finance these religious ministries against their consent, which is against constitutional law, state constitutional law, especially here in Indiana, that all religions are equal. And basically, the faith-based initiatives, summed up in a nutshell, is we shall have other gods, and that's a violation of the commandment. It's amazing how George Bush and the secret societies and Skull and Bones has convinced the church to disobey the voice of God and obey the voice of Washington.
Yeah, now let's look at one of the related questions we got was, how if the deception, because I think there's something in the Bible about the end time deception, but if it were possible the very elect would be deceived, well, how does a person know if they're not of this other bloodline? How is it that they even know it if they're deceived?
And that's what the Word of God's all about. You have two voices here. You have the voice of the Creator, and you have the voice of the Destroyer. The voice of the Creator is consistent, and the voice of the Destroyer is consistently contrary to that voice. It's pretty easy to know whether you're deceived or not. If you say all gods are good, and you reject that there's only one God and you shall not have any other gods, it's pretty easy to see anybody who's contrary to the Word of God is not of God.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the churches should get together and begin to resist current laws, or should they write their congressmen and say, stop it with the faith-based initiatives because they don't want their money supporting Islam?
That's where the line's going to be drawn. The churches need to get together and take the business seriously, and they need to understand there can't be any desecration without any kind of outcry from the people letting them know that this is not tolerated, this cannot go on. It's time for the church to come together, to be one. You think about it. That was the King's last, final, dying request, was that we would become one, even as He and the Father are one. It's time for the church to become one.
Wow. Okay. All right, this final question, we'll try to get it in real quick. First of all, do you believe there is a such thing as a rapture?
I believe there's a catching away. I call it the second Exodus. Just like the first is physical, and the second is spiritual. Just like you had a first Exodus, the second Exodus is going to be a spiritual Exodus because we don't have no wilderness.
We're talking about paganism. We're talking about the Illuminati. We're talking about Freemasonry. We're talking about what's going on in this country. And a lot of people have moved around the edges. But by the time we get done with these two programs, we're going to hit the beast right where it counts. You're listening to the Edge radio broadcast.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see.